For this new season I've decided to drop the best from obscure Amiga games you've never heard of, as sometimes the games are not particularly good, but still can be interesting or worth mentioning for one reason or another. And yes, few of those obscure, odd stinkers found their way into this video as well. Hope you'll enjoy it despite that, or because of them, your call. Agent CZ, aka Agent Czesio, and yes I can pronounce that, is an extremely basic Polish platformer. Not basic because it's Polish, but because, well, it just is. That said, despite it only being released in the language, you don't really need to read or understand anything in it, as it's as simple to play as it's to make a cake. And if you don't know how to make one, it's that simple. To make a cake, you take a cake and you make it. Period. I know, cringe, but this explanation seems funny to me somehow. Agent CZ is a gather all objects, time your jumps well and avoid obstacles kind of a game. And that's precisely what you'll be mainly doing, other than looking for something else to play, that is. And it's also a perfect example of a late budget Amiga title that there's nothing wrong about per se, but also nothing spectacular about it either. It's a game that you may fire up and complete once, and will never get back to it again. Does it mean that it's a bad one? Not necessarily, but it's definitely a title that's not worth tracking down if you don't already have it in your library. So, you can take whatever I just said about it as you please. Akira. Yes, based on that Akira manga/anime, is one of the least popular and worst games on the Amiga. And that's not something I say lightly given how terrible Pro Soccer 2190 was. It's not as bad, but it's definitely in the same basket and represents the same incredibly low quality of school of game design. It's a side-scrolling action-adventure that mixes up gameplay concepts quite heavily, never really reaching the potential original IP could be used for. Especially that the intro and credits make it up to be a pretty decent game. But as soon as you start the game up, oh my days, things turn 180 degrees near instantly. In the first few levels you're driving a bike through an obstacle-filled highway, avoiding holes, roadblocks and jumping off of ramps. Or ramps over holes, potato potato, tomato tomato, french fries, chips. If that's not enough, you're being actively attacked by mobs throwing bombs at you. I mean, it's been years since I saw Akira last, but I doubt there were any bomb throwings playing a major role in the plot. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but keep in mind that I know how it ends, right? Anyway, after these driving sections, there are a few platforming levels which are no better really, and require only to kill anything that comes your way. Simple as that. Then there's one level where you fly in a weird thingy magic, but, and you probably guessed it already, Akira never gets better. It's as bad as the movie was good. And if devs would only focus on one or two gameplay modes and made them actually fun, the other two could be skipped and Akira on Amiga may have not been a bad cookie. After two average or worse than average games, it's finally good to cover something that's of a bit higher quality. And Alien World is just that. It's a shoot 'em up mixing horizontally and vertically scrolling levels. Interestingly enough, the screen itself does not scroll automatically, but only when you move, giving me a sense of more control and making the game feel less hectic than most other shooters. Other than flying and killing various bodies, you also have to quote-unquote combat the gravity that actively pulls you downwards. Defeated enemies drop so-called Zen, the currency of the game, or weapon power-ups. Zen itself can be used in many of the shops spread across the game world to either buy extra health or upgrades for your weapons. While Alien World's graphics are definitely not bad, they're nothing memorable, and it's in large part because the game was originally released on C64 and then later ported to Amiga and Atari ST. So while it's notably higher res and colors than the original, it's similarly unimpressive overall. It plays pretty good though, if you don't mind very 8-bit feeling design, so that's probably the most important thing that you should take out of everything I just said. American Gladiators is a multi-event sports game based on the TV show of the same title, and a pretty decent representation of the game show that I was never a fan of. It is composed out of 7 events that will test your strength, skill and speed, and they are well known to the fans of the show: Assault, Human Cannonball, Atlasphere, Joust, Powerball and The Wall. And if you can count, and I'm still that all my viewers can, that's 6 and not 7. The 7th is the Eliminator, which combines the elements of the first 2 seasons of the TV show into a single and demanding challenge. Unlike any other versions of the game, American Gladiators on the Amiga can be played by even up to 16 players. But even if you tackle it alone, you can expect to face 10 famous from the TV Gladiators. 5 male and 5 female. Ice, Gold, Lace, Blaze, Zap, Turbo, Nitro, Gemini, Thunder and Laser. And while I only ever saw a few episodes of it, I gotta say that these names scream late 80s and early 90s like hardly anything else, and sound like catchy names for a bubblegum brand. Oh, and if by any chance the last event of Eliminator ends with a tie, it's run once more to find a definite winner. American Gladiators is actually quite fun if you like odd little multi-event games. Axel's Magic Hammer is the name of a romance novel I definitely did not write in high school, and also a video game in which your in-game world girlfriend Lucy has been kidnapped by the evil dragon who's planning to feast on her. So, you, the titular Axel, being the stand-up boyfriend that you are, grab your magical hammer and set on a mission to save her. Axel's Magic Hammer, that is very similar to Sega's Alex Kidd, takes you through 8 levels starting in Roman Village and ending in Dragon's Castle's dungeon. On the way you'll fight various baddies and avoid many different obstacles while picking up power-ups from blocks that you crush with your hammer. And these are quite varied and fun too, from a simple hammer throw all the way to the helmet allowing you to destroy blocks from below, Mario style. While Axel's Magic Hammer is not the toughest platformer out there, it's not one of the easiest either, and having an option to continue playing from where you died last rather than starting from the very first level is a huge help. And it's there. The option, that is. Graphics and sounds are pretty good too, definitely not something to write home about, but pretty good. And it's overall a very decent platformer that sadly somehow was overlooked by the history. Hopefully, this video will shed a little tiny itty bitty light on it today. Baby Joe in Going Home is a humorous side-scrolling platformer where you play as the titular Baby Joe, and are trying to get home through 4 enemy-filled levels. As you go about it fighting bees, spiders, lawnmowers, yes, you heard that right, and any other body's life or otherwise, you get to collect various useful power-ups, like rattles that you can carry 5 of that can be used as a projectile to throw at the enemies, milk bottles that work as your de facto health points refill, extra lives, and even nappies or super nappies for that matter too. Because yes, you consume cakes and your nappy will get bigger and darker and your movements become slower. You do the math, what's the reason behind the change. So you will need to replace it via pickup. What happens with the used ones? Nobody knows, we can only assume that they're used to pile up on top of copies of this game, as other than having semi-decent graphics and pretty good music, there's nothing really great about Baby Joe. The scrolling is painful to say the least, the animation is stiff and the difficulty is unfair. On top of that, the levels are not overly creative and boringly designed, but that's just my opinion. And you may feel different about it, give it a go if you're up for a challenge, that is. You're Badlands Pete, a gun for hire, and you're on a mission, a quest, or just hired, depends how you wanna look at it. So you're sent to track down, recover and bring back the governor's daughters. And you do so in a mostly side-scrolling fashion, going through towns and titular Badlands, killing any and all enemies on your way. And they can literally be anyone, as not only bandits are your enemies, and others may try to down you too. Even old ladies, which is odd but also adds to the unpredictability of gameplay. In all fairness, however, civilians will attack you in most cases only when you enter their houses uninvited. And you will, cause those houses is where you'll find additional bullets. Because believe it or not, despite what movies has shown us, they were not unlimited in the Wild West. Interestingly enough, since we're on the subject, shooting itself is a 3-step process, where you have to draw your gun, aim and then shoot. And when you're done, you have to holster it to be able to move again. Fun. Some might say that Badlands Pete's gameplay is rather simple and repeatable, but I find it relaxing in an odd kinda go and dispose of everything way. Was it meant to be played like that? Hard to tell, but I can, so why shouldn't I? Better Dead Than Alien is 1988's classic shooter and a homage to even older classics like Galaxians, Galaga or even Centipede. That last in terms of how you control your craft. Because yes, you're flying in space and you have your own craft. And it's a good one. How lucky of you. But you also have to use it to beat 75 levels that the game is composed of. So your ship's at the bottom of the screen and can move in all 4 directions, shooting at aliens on top, arranged in various formations. These can obviously break formations at time, charging at you, but it's not something you won't be able to handle, being the universal hero that you are. Other than the generic typical Galaxian-like fare of basic levels, there are also those that are akin to asteroids, and even boss fight here and there. Unlike the aforementioned classics though, Better Dead Than Alien gives you just 1 life, and rewards more methodical, slower and careful playing, rather than all-out gung-ho approach. So it's best to slowly ground your way through hordes of aliens not missing any power-ups, rather than to maniacally push forward just to get to the endgame screen. Despite your ship and enemies moving like early EGA games sprites did, so using just a couple of frames of animation each, Better Dead Than Alien is actually pretty fun, and if you like early arcade games, it's definitely one to try out. I'm pretty sure that everyone watching these videos of mine remembers Beverly Hills Cop with Eddie Murphy, right? It was a real fun comedy and one of the better movies of the early 80s. Was the game as good too, you may be wondering? Not to keep you on the edge of your seat, if you haven't played it, it's not. It's another of those wasted opportunities kind of game. A collection of 4 mini-games that all feel as they are touch short of being decent if they were a bit more polished, but also all seem to lack it in mounts. Polish, that is. Not to mention choppy framerate and slow gameplay. So yeah. Anyway, said minigames can either be played in story mode or practiced separately from the game's main menu. And there are shooting baddies in a warehouse in side-scrolling action platformer fashion, chasing 3 trucks full of weapons and shooting them one by one, then getting into mansion in top-down view and obviously shooting all enemies that come your way, and final stage is the first-person shooter within the mansion that's not only boring but also pretty limited in movement and with just one enemy on the screen at a time. Given that Beverly Hills Cop was released 6 years after the movie, I honestly expected much more. I didn't get it, but no one seemed to care back then, and no one seems to care now either. Black Hornet is a vertically scrolling shoot 'em up. Thanks for watching, I hope you liked the video. If you did, hit those like and... Nah, I'm just kidding, it's not over yet. That said, I'm curious how many of you actually did stop watching after what I just said. Coming back to our little shooter at hand, Black Hornet on the Amiga is as generic as they come. You encounter various different enemies on ground and the air, and as in all games in the genre, you have to destroy them all. Or try to, at the very least. Level graphics are pretty decent and varied, I gotta give it that, but they clash with sprites so often that at times it's hard to make out the exact sizes and location of all enemies in a particular attack wave. It's not game-breaking by any means, just requires much more attention than your everyday shooter does. Black Hornet features quite a few different weapons too, and if you have more than one at a time, you can switch between them using spacebar, which is nice. One worth mentioning feature, however, and a counterpoint to my earlier statement of Black Hornet being generic, is the fact that you can actually land on airfields and the aircraft carriers whenever you see them. And when you do, you'll be able to refuel and buy more weapons for points. But other than this single novelty, my initial estimate stands. Black Hornet is generic. It's not bad, it's just not spectacular whatsoever. But if you're a fan of a genre, there's no reason to skip it if you get a chance to play it. If you're only Sunday shooter aficionado, best start with a better vertical shooter, like Banshee or Swift for instance. Most of you probably expected another of the 10 years of early Windows gaming video now. But since I'm straight out of hospital and far from 100% yet, and these videos require much more work, I decided to make a couple of the easier ones first, so that I won't overwork myself and get some time to recover. One way or another, no series are on hold and Windows and C64 videos are coming back soon too. If you liked the video, hit those like and subscribe buttons below. If you didn't, well then there's thumbs down there too. But I suppose you wouldn't have persevered up to this point if you really didn't. Around 60% of you are not subscribed and there's currently no way of knowing if YouTube will decide to recommend you the next episode or not, other than subscribing and hitting that bell, that is. And when you hit that bell, whenever the new video is out, YouTube will actually send you a small and friendly notification about it, so you wouldn't miss it. If you'd like to support the channel, Patreon and YouTube memberships are a great way of doing so. They will help me release better content and also they get first dibs on all new videos before they're publicly accessible on YouTube. If you can't or don't want to do that though, likes and subscribes are great too. I would like to take a moment here and thank all the YouTube creators from whose videos short bits were taken to serve as a background to my commentary. They're amazing and stars among the retro community. You will find names of their channels at the top of the screen when their footage is running and also in the video description below. For me though, this is all, so have a good one and I'll see you next time. Peace.